let's start with the hard question. Why is there a need for this project? And why? I mean, there's a lot of games out there that are being brought back to life. Why the focus on the early editions of Champions?
First generation Champions, which is the first through third editions and the two related supplements, maybe a couple other little pieces here and there, it really brought something to role playing. It, in many ways, redefined role playing for a lot of people, or opened it up for a lot of people, how to look at character creation. There was how to proceed in terms of why you would play. The excitement of playing this way was incredibly infectious. And so part of it is celebration. That's not the same as nostalgia, right? But it is celebration of a key part of the hobby. I think institutional memory, cultural memory is important, and have always advocated for knowing the early games and for knowing what their virtues were. And sometimes you find that they're just sitting there waiting to teach you something that your current array of games, your hotness, isn't giving you. Champions counts right there. There is stuff to learn from first generation Champions that you are not going to get from your OSR and your indie and your, hot designer here and your pundit there and all that. You're not going to get it. And I think it's an important thing.
What is it to you that makes Champions so good about telling these kind of, comic book superhero stories?
Excellent. Yeah, I keep saying there's a thing, and it's
yeah.
So
what is that thing?
Yeah, come on, spit it out, Edwards. You don't have a safety net for story. Story is not something in this game that is codified. There's no setting. There are some setting elements that you can use and adapt, like Viper and stuff like that, but there is no setting. There's no campaign history. But you don't have to think of them as canonical for your game, or anything in there to be canonical for your game. It's written totally against that viewpoint. So there's no setting. There's no sort of model of how to do a campaign in the terms of like arc construction and stuff like that. No, it is very much you play to do it. That you have here all the components for making a comic story as good as anything. As good as anything. Yourselves, go. You have it. You have the ability to do this. We trust you to make up your characters, and it was written by comics lovers for comics lovers. That just jumps off the page. And the idea is that and we know, and we can do this in role playing. We're doing it right now. It's blowing our own minds here. And so there's no safety net for where the story's going to go. And look at what Alston did with his work in Strikeforce. It's all about where we got to without knowing we were going to get there. It's all about the characters develop and conclude. There's a great essay about the character story, not as a plan. Those disadvantages, they change. The values of the characters, they change. The way they relate to villains and who the villains are changes. Characters go rogue, characters reform. Somebody might pick up a villain character because they say that character is way interesting to me. I want that character to be my hero. And there is a lot of that kind of rock and roll, run with the solo, where did we get now kind of attitude toward story construction. I'm talking about that thing. The idea that story is not something you experience as an audience, as a customer. Story is something that you do, and you don't know where it's going, and you are feeling it with the character. The character matures as you play, And maybe the character, they have characters in Strike Force, who burn out, who fail, right? Who are tragic in their outcomes. And then there are others which are, heroic, and others which are, kind of in between. And you can see the same thing in a great deal of what they write. There's so many other interesting things too. Champions play culture in many ways invented a lot of things of its own that when you go back and are actually looking at the book are actually quite different. So looking at those texts really is like looking at a new game, I think. It would qualify. If somebody published Champions First Generation in a kind of a somewhat, well, shall we say, it would have to be personally, tweaked to make various rules fit or things that are best practices changed a bit, but effectively not much different from First Generation Champions. As a single rules package, it would qualify as a new game. And that is what part one of Champions Now is. First Generation Champions written up, admittedly individually tweaked, because that's inevitable, and so and basically said this is not a new game, but you know what? It might as well be. And to role playing assembled, it is. And there is stuff here to learn that you may not ever have thought about or thought possible.